Good morning, family.
Good morning.
What a joy to be here in this beautiful month as we continuously celebrate the light. And knowing that that light emanates from without and from within. And as we come together, we kindle that light more brightly together. So, what a perfect time to celebrate, because this is the time to celebrate our brothers and sisters of the Jewish tradition as Hanukkah is about to make its place on the calendar. That's next week. But I just wanted to share a little bit about that today and also take the liberty of kindling the candles today in rededication. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So I think probably most everybody is familiar with the story of Hanukkah, but maybe not. And so it was the time about 168 BC when the Greeks were on the move across the planet, and they were controlling a lot of the Middle East. And the local king, a leader for the Greek nation, Antiochus, by decree of the higher ups, was to remove the Jews from uh, not the face of the earth, but try to assimilate them into the culture because they wanted the Greek Hellenistic culture to be the one and only. And so they moved into the area of Judea, Jerusalem, and there was a stronghold of really just peasants, farmers, Jewish farmers who didn't like this idea at all. So as they arrived and came into battle, the Maccabees were the Jewish people in residence in that area, and they said absolutely not. This was uh, uh, a demonstration of a powerful force, I would say a forceful entity that was trying to take over the domain that was inhabited by these Jewish people who had a strong identity. They were peasants, but they had a strong identity and they had a strong belief in God. They were dedicated to their belief. They were people of complete faith. And knowing their history, having been slaves in Egypt and liberated, they were not about to be re imprisoned in another way of being. They were freed once and they were going to hold on to their freedom. So the battles ensued, and the Maccabees prevailed ultimately, and this was after the Hellenistic armies had destroyed the temple and desecrated it, and as the story goes, spread pig's blood around it. So it was completely, the sacredness was completely obliterated from one level of thinking. Of course, we can never obliterate sacredness, and this is what we know. But it's the story of the power of vision, the power of trust, the power of faith, the power of self-determination that is each one of our birthright, each one of our birthright. And so this is the celebration. It's the God within that leads each one of us, and in this case, the Jewish people, to prevail against all odds, against all odds. The most powerful nation on the planet at the time, they were able to repel them because of their powerful belief and trust in themselves as God filling them with the light necessary into their hearts, which demonstrated as complete courage to prevail, and they did. So the remembrance is over 2,000 years old. And so, to me, at this time of year and in this place, because in reading again about this story, it made me think of our own country's liberation, the farmers who came to settle in this country. and then did not want the oppressive imposition of taxes and all of that. And that's what the Hellenistic oppression was about as well, control. So the quality of freedom, which is near and dear to my heart, and certainly the major standard bearer for this country, right, is certainly something that we can all identify with. So it's on the humanistic scale, the scale of the country, and so individually, collectively, and universally. So so let's light the candles.
Thank you, Candace.
Our topic today is Science of Mind and Hanukkah. Rabbi Mitchell M. Hurwitz writes, "Soon we celebrate Hanukkah, our festival of lights. Light is a very important element in many different religious traditions and holidays. Light is a symbol of the divine presence within our lives and our constant desire to cast away the darkness of gloom and despair and replace it with the brightness of hope and renewal. It is not coincidental that Hanukkah comes in December, the darkest time of the calendar year. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes defined light in the glossary in this way, on page 607. In flashes of illumination, the inspired have seen into the very center of reality. A glimpse of reality illuminates the whole being with a flood of light. Every mystic has had this experience. Jesus and Moses' faces, after a period of illumination, were so bright their followers could not look upon them. In the moments of deepest realization, the great mystics have sensed that the one life flows through all. They have also seen substance, a fine, white, brilliant stuff, forever falling into everything, indestructible and eternal. At times they were blinded by the light. So let us affirm together from the screen.
I awaken to the light of God within, and I am in awe. I am as eternal and vast as the space that spans beyond the myriad universes. My contact with everyone is a holy encounter as I behold the one light present within all selves. I shine the light of divine love, peace, and joy, happily co-creating heaven on earth, a world that works for everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Linda. Beautifully done, thank you. So again, one of the joys that I have experienced in moving beyond and inclusive of my Christian background is when I began to study all the world religions and realized, particularly as I got into New Thought and Science of Mind, and actually A Course in Miracles even before that, that there is the level of history that's in those sacred texts, and today we're talking about the history of the Jewish tradition that's in the Bible. So there's that level. And then there's another level that we can read these sacred texts, which is the morals that we gain from them, the spiritual laws. And then even deeper, and that's what I'm going to be sharing today, the even deeper meanings that are the metaphysical, or that which is about our consciousness, the inner journey. And that inner journey is a journey of moving from separation and all that goes with that, the fear, the discord, the disharmony, the suffering. So it's moving from that place into oneness, the awareness that we are not only living in this presence of the divine, but we are the presence of the divine individualized. We are one. We are of the one. And that awareness brings us to the awareness that we are light, because light is the nature of the divine. As I'm going to be sharing today, it's more than just a figurative thing. There is a reality, there is a deep, deep reality to it.
I'm going to add
So.
some light.
Hmm. So these symbols then that are in these stories and in sacred literature, we have to remember that they were written for the most part by mystics and written by people who lived in a different culture than we do. And for them, the most important thing was to convey the spiritual, that deep spiritual meaning to those who were the followers of the path. So there's a lot of symbology that is specific to that region of the world. And so when we read these sacred texts, it's important to understand this deep symbology, what it means for that culture. And then also to be aware of, that doesn't mean we just write it off because it's not about us. In truth, these deeper spiritual truths can be absolutely applied to our lives in this day and age. So, this idea of looking for that deeper truth, the awakened consciousness, awakened to love and awakened to oneness, is not only the path of the mystic, it is the path of many, many, many more people in this day and age. And it's not just in science of mind, but the mystics. And you heard it, that particular rabbi that was quoted, he understood there's an underlying truth between all the different religions, and there are more and more mystics in the different world religions who are seeing that connection and seeing that oneness. And that is the great hope of our time, is that more and more people awaken to the truth that even though we have our different traditions and so on, that we are all of the same source, that we are all unified in that source, that we are all one, and that love is the answer to all that ails us on this planet. Joseph Campbell's book, I have to say, I have just so thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. It's called Thou Art That. And he deals in symbol. So as he talks about different stories in the Bible, in particular, he also brings in some things from Buddhism and Hinduism and so on to really bring us to the awareness of this underlying truth that supports our spiritual path to enlightenment. So today, of course, as part of our tradition, even though this is not the beginning of Hanukkah, we're doing it in advance to prepare everybody, that we are looking at this Hanukkah story from a deeper perspective. And so, taken literally, or taken from a historical standpoint, it's about a group of people who are rebelling and overcoming physical oppression by defeating their enemy, which were the Greeks, reclaiming their temple, and then the miracle of the light, where one day's worth of oil kept the lights, lit, or the candles lit for 8 days. So there's, when these stories were written, it's important to understand that the mystics who wrote them, they would take some history, and then they would also add to it. They would add exaggeration. I learned this when I studied metaphysical Bible with from the original Aramaic tradition with Rocco Errico's community. And they would do exaggeration, they would use symbology, so they would enhance the stories so that they would tell something beyond just the history, but actually be steeped in the mystical truth underlying it. So we don't want to argue whether it really happened or not. I mean, that's what unfortunately what's happened is people have said, "Oh, well, that's myth, so I'm not going to pay any attention to it." And there are a lot of people in our world who have taken that stance. Instead, we want to look at it from, so what is the deep symbology? What are the metaphors and what are they teaching us about our own spiritual journey so we can make it applicable in the here and now? And we can do that. And story is a great way, by the way, to get to the subconscious mind and to help to transform those patterns that are deep in our subconscious. Teaching stories like this are powerful at doing that. So again, we look at the oppression of the people. What does that teach us about consciousness? How do we oppress ourselves? Yeah? With our thoughts, right? The thoughts, that this mind chatter that goes on that tells us the way things should or shouldn't be, how they must be, how they need to be, are when we dwell on the past and feel guilty or shamed, when we are afraid of the future and conjure up a whole lot of fear in ourselves, fear, doubt, all of that kind of thing. That mind chatter creates that. Because if the mind chatter were to fall away, we would be completely in the present moment in a state of silence and be able to just be with the moment and be with the beauty and the grace of the moment. And that's where our freedom is. You know, a lot of the stories in the Bible are about freedom. And truly, external freedom, we know, comes from freedom of the mind. When we learn to free ourselves, then we are clear. We have that clear line to universal intelligence because we live, move, and have our being in universal mind. So we have a clear, direct conduit for guidance to accomplish amazing things. And so, the miracle of light, I look at they reclaimed the temple. It's kind of like reclaiming our body temple and shining the light of truth in our body temple. Yeah? I mean, I that's what I love is when we look at these, and each one of us can do this. We can take these stories and look at them and say, how does that apply to me in the here and now? So there is actually scientific evidence. I'm sure many of you know this by now, but there is scientific evidence that all living things are made of light, and they call them biophotons or ultra weak photon emissions, UPEs. Our DNA actually produces light. Think about that. The DNA produces light and very extremely high biophoton emissions that travel throughout our entire nervous system and inform all the different parts of our body about what's going on in our minds. That's essentially what's going on. So when we practice things like gratitude and blessing others, and when we do our prayer work, our spiritual mind treatments, when we meditate and clear the mind, and I'm sure you can think of other practices, these higher vibrational practices actually ramp up the light. And they've had some. There's an experiment that I have here where participants were placed in a darkened room and were asked to visualize bright light. That's another way that you can do it. And they increase their biophoton emissions significantly. So even just envisioning light, and I have a meditation that I do before the service that is by Sai Ma, and it is a pillar of light meditation. And I love doing that because I know that it lights me up before I come out here and offer you the message. So illumination is a real thing. It's turning up, ramping up the light in our bodies. using the power of our minds. Isn't that awesome? We can do that. We can all do that. So I want to share with you a contemporary story of illumination that I believe is illumination, and there are lots of them. There was a young man some 6 years ago who did a TED Talk, and his name was Boyan Slat. I don't know if any of you know who this young man is. He caught a vision. He imagined a device that would go out into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Everybody knows what that is, right? Where all the trash and the plastic and everything is all collected. And what they have shown in science is when someone catches a vision like that, it's light. When we pray, light comes out of us. So when we catch a vision, it's light. So after 6 years of research, failures, reconfigurations, and weeks spent out at sea traveling to the Great Pacific Patch, collecting all of the trash, and then bringing it back to shore in Vancouver, by the way, Boyan's ocean cleanup device returned this month, just this month, with 60 bags of plastic trash. Everything from fishing nets, it says, to microplastics that are 1 millimeter in size. I mean, so it's picking up the little stuff too, which is really cool. So imagine the light emitting from Boyan Slat as he returns to shore with his first load of plastic. This is one of many because the intention is to clean up that whole entire huge area. And then I'm also knowing that I also have heard that they are planning on stationing these cleanup devices at the mouths of all the major rivers that pour into the ocean, particularly the ones that are dumping the highest level of plastics. He was 19 then, right now he's 25. He was 19 when he first had the vision and did the TED Talk, and he is now 25. So we have been really focused on and committed to sustainability in this spiritual community. And to me, this is the modern day demonstration of overcoming what appears to be the darkness, right? The darkness, the pollution that's taking place and the despair that a lot of people feel. It's those of us who are willing to stay optimistic and to catch the vision of what is ours to do that is what's called for, to keep our light ramped up, to keep tuned in to the guidance that we are each receiving. This is spirituality in action. So it does us no good to just read those stories from a place of history. I mean, it has its place, yes. And tradition, all of this is really lovely, and I honor it and I support it. To me, the most important part of all of this is when we bring these principles into action in our daily lives here and now. Do you agree? Yeah, this is what it's all about. So I'd like to leave you with this beautiful quote by Machard Strassfeld, who wrote a book called A Book of Life. We light the Hanukkah candles to remember the miracle that even a small light, and think about Boyan, even a small light can dominate a vast darkness. The menorah reminds us of the miracle that no matter how dark life may be, there remains a source of light deep inside us. The light of our souls reflects and refracts the light of the one light, with a capital one light, God, who is all brightness. And so let's turn within in prayer as we reclaim the temples of our own bodies in this moment by realizing a higher truth that there is only one life, one source, one presence, one power. And that life, that light is our life, our light. And we are here, therefore, to be the light of the world. To be the light of the world. Knowing that we are light and knowing that light is the light that shines away all darkness. We don't have to struggle with the darkness. All we need to do is turn to the light as we practice blessing others, as we practice our gratitude practices, feeling grateful, as we practice kindness and compassion and all other forms of light behavior and thoughts, as we unravel our own thinking by asking ourselves, is it true? And if it's stressful, then it's not true. It's not true. And we bring ourselves back to the truth over and over and over again. Because as we do this, we know that we have a wonderful mission here on the planet. And we as community are making a difference each and every moment that we choose the light over the darkness. As individuals, as community. We are doing that here and now. And I know as we do that, we are co-creating heaven on earth. It's evident in this community with the laughter, with the joy, with that which we are involved in with our relationships with one another, with our outreach to the community. And so together we are also knowing that along with that heaven on earth comes a truth that we are also here for a world that works for everyone. And so I give my thanks for the illumination of this truth. I give my thanks for the way in which we're all lit up right now as we focus on this truth. And I release this word into the universal law of mind and trust. I actually rest in God in full trust that all is well. And together we say, yes, and so it is. Amen.
Amen. Anyone else?